So welcome to the Icelandic lava show. This is actually the only show in the whole world where you can see molten lava flowing inside a building. And I'm going to be your presenter today. So my name is Trym. I am not from Iceland, but from Norway, another country with beautiful nature. Except we also have trees in Norway. So I came to Iceland the first time when I was 20 years old because I decided to try and walk across all of Iceland from the north to the south, approximately 600 kilometers, and I spent 1 month on this expedition. And that was such an incredible experience, walking through these crazy landscapes carved by glaciers and volcanoes. So of course I fell in love with Iceland and I decided to move here. And I spent the last 5 years working here as a glacier guide. But last year I was a bit clumsy and I managed to fall into a crevasse on the glacier and I almost didn't survive. So my wife strongly suggested I do something safer. So playing with molten lava seemed like a good second choice. And the show we're gonna see today, it's around 45 minutes and this show has 3 parts. So first, I'm going to give you a very quick presentation to try and teach you a little bit about this area, about some of our volcanoes and their eruptions, and also what it's like to live here in Vík, right next to one of Iceland's most powerful volcanoes. We're also going to see a short video, and then in the last part of the show, we will start to pour in the lava. And this show was actually invented here in Iceland by this Icelandic couple called Ragga and Julius. And they actually had this idea when they were standing on top of an erupting volcano. And I'm sure that you guys have probably heard about this eruption, which happened here back in 2010 from the volcano that nobody outside of Iceland is able to pronounce. Mostly because it's called Eyjafjallajökull, which is quite a tongue twister. But this eruption became so famous due to the massive amounts of volcanic ash it released into the atmosphere, which spread to Europe and shut down every single European airport, so nobody could fly anywhere. But I think the most entertaining part of this eruption was seeing all of the news reporters around the world trying to pronounce Eyjafjallajökull, which didn't go very well. So they very quickly decided to give up. And instead, they called it the E15 eruption. E for the first letter and 15 for all the other weird Icelandic letters they couldn't pronounce. So very clever. But even though this eruption was very famous, I think most people didn't realize that there was actually 2 eruptions during this time. There was the big eruption, which impacted air travel, but there was also a smaller eruption, which happened just 1 month earlier, right next to Eyjafjallajökull, where we have this very beautiful mountain ridge called Fimmvörðuháls. And that part of the mountain is not covered by a glacier. So this eruption became a lot more beautiful and viewer-friendly. People could hike up there and they could see the lava flowing through the landscape. The thing is though, Fimmvörðuháls is an extremely very steep area, so what happened as the lava was flowing, it fell off the side of the mountain, and it actually created the highest ever recorded lava fall anywhere on the planet. It was roughly 200 meters or 600 feet. So if anyone here has already been to Skogafoss, this big waterfall nearby, this one is around 60 meters. So you can imagine Skogafoss 3 times taller, but with molten lava pouring down. Now this was obviously quite spectacular, so thousands of people hiked all the way up to Fimmvörðuháls to be able to experience this, including of course Ragga and Julius. And what they saw up there was just so mind-blowingly beautiful and fascinating. They thought there must be some way we could try to recreate this so that we can show lava to everyone who comes to Iceland. Because it's actually surprisingly difficult to see any molten lava in Iceland, despite the fact that we have 130 volcanoes, 30 of which are still active, and we get eruptions every 3 to 5 years on average. The problem, however, is that most of the eruptions that happen in Iceland, they either happen underneath a glacier or far into the highlands, which can make it very challenging to access. And secondly, these eruptions can of course be extremely dangerous. You don't necessarily want to walk towards an erupting volcano, because when volcanoes erupt, they can produce massive explosions, pyroclastic flows, toxic gases, thousands of lightning strikes, earthquakes, glacier floods, and of course the lava itself, which can burn through almost anything. So it did take a few years of researching and experimenting, and also some fairly interesting conversations with a local fire department in Vík before we were able to open the concept you'll see today, where we can show you molten lava very close, but without any of the dangers from natural eruptions. So yeah, if you haven't seen molten lava before, then I hope you will enjoy the experience with us here today. At least, I think I can promise you that this will be the hottest experience you'll have in Iceland. You're finally going to get warm on this trip, which is good stuff. Now the movie we're going to see, it's going to tell us a little bit about why Iceland is such a volcanic island to begin with, but actually it's going to focus mostly on this area. So Vík is actually located inside the Katla Geopark. And this park consists of not just one, but 4 active volcanoes, and 2 of them are the most active in the whole country. And of course, it will also tell you about Katla, which is the volcano closest to us right now. So Katla is a very large central volcano, which is located just 20 kilometers to the north, and it's considered to be among the most active and powerful volcanoes in the world. Katla has erupted 20 times since the settlement of Iceland by the Vikings in the late 800s. And if we look at those statistics, that tells us that we should expect an eruption from Katla more or less every 50 years on average. However, the last time that Katla erupted was all the way back in 1918, which is now over 105 years ago. So right now, we are experiencing the longest pause ever recorded between 2 of these eruptions, and we could say that Katla is 55 years overdue to erupt, which is a slightly terrifying thought when you're living in Vík right next to Katla, but you know, Hakuna Matata, we hope we have a few years left to live here. But even though it has been a long time with no eruption, it doesn't mean that Katla is no longer active. This is still a very, very active volcano. We have earthquakes in Katla almost every day, and it actually seems like it's getting a bit more intense lately, because in the last 6-7 months, we have recorded more earthquakes in Katla than in the previous 5 years combined. So it feels a bit like we might be getting closer to some eruption. And when that finally happens, it is very, very powerful. It will impact not just Iceland, but other parts of the world as well. However, those of us who live here in Vík, right next to Katla, our main concern with these eruptions is actually linked to the glacier, because Katla is located right underneath one of Iceland's biggest glaciers called Mýrdalsjökull. And this glacier, not only does it cover twice the area of Reykjavik, but right above Katla, there is a layer of glacier ice, which is over 700 meters thick, or about 2,000 feet. So imagine what happens when Katla erupts. With all this heat coming out of the volcano, it starts to melt the glacier very quickly. And then all that meltwater starts to build up and accumulate inside the caldera of the volcano, which is basically a massive bowl-shaped structure in the mountain. And when that caldera fills up with enough water, it will at some point reach its limit, and the glacier will no longer be able to support all of this pressure. So what happens is the glacier breaks open and it releases all of this water in a massive glacier flash flood. And these are actually some of the biggest floods that we ever see on our planet. Just to give you some idea of how big they are, take for example the last eruption in 1918, coming down Katla. The flood measured over 60 meters tall, like the height of Skogafoss waterfall, and up to 12 kilometers across. And then by the time the flood reached the coastline, it was still around 20 meters or 60 feet tall. That's roughly the same amount of water as the 4 biggest rivers in the world combined. But it's not just water, there's also huge icebergs constantly breaking off from the glacier and volcanic sediment from the volcano going into the flood. So, of course, this flood will wipe out absolutely anything in its path. Any roads or bridges, vegetation, or even buildings is all washed away, and the only thing left behind is a black sand desert. And you can actually see this desert very easily. If you drive 10 minutes further east, you enter this very flat, barren wasteland called Mýrdalssandur, and these are the floodplains from Katla's eruption. But in case any of you were hoping to sleep here in Vík tonight and you don't want to be feeling stressed about Katla, then I also should tell you that we are actually a little bit prepared here in Vík of what we will do when the day comes and Katla finally erupts. So just for fun, I like to pretend that Katla is going to erupt today so that I can tell you exactly what to do. So yeah, let's pretend Katla erupts today. Well, the first thing that would happen in that situation is that we will send out a text message to every single cell phone in the area. And this message will tell you that Katla is erupting. You have 15 to 30 minutes to evacuate, plenty of time, and you should go immediately to the meeting point. And if you are a tourist, then your meeting point in Vík is our church. That's the most famous building in town, so it's easy to find. But most importantly, the church is up on high ground because this area might flood during the eruption. Now, when you get to the church, you'll meet our priest, and we'll start to sacrifice one tourist every hour. No, I'm joking. No, but what is important to remember if you get this message, that means it's already too late to try and leave the village. So you are stuck here because out of these 20 eruptions in the past, 18 times the flood came over the east side, but twice it actually came over the west side of the village. So we can't take any chances. We're just gonna wait here, figure out where the flood goes, and then you can go the opposite way. But if you're like me and you live in Vík and you just bought a house here, then you have to be a little bit more prepared. So in every house in this village, we should have one of these posters. So I have one of these in my house, and on the top of this poster, it says, "Home abandoned." And there is a checklist of things we have to do when Katla erupts. And one of the first points here says that we who live in Vík, we should always have evacuation equipment packed and ready to go at all times. So in my bag at home, we have dust masks to protect our lungs from inhaling volcanic ash. We have protective glasses like we give you here. We have headlights because the ash blocks the daylight, making it very dark. Water bottles, dry food, and extra clothing, anything else you need to be okay for at least a few days. So that's something we should all have in our house, just ready to grab and go. It also says things like, try to evacuate in as few cars as possible to minimize traffic, check on your neighbors if they need help evacuating, unplug the electronics in your house in case it floods. And also, there's a very important note here for the farmers. You know, they have animals like horses and sheep, and we don't have enough time to bring them all out of the village. So as soon as Katla starts erupting, the farmers should open all the gates and allow the animals to escape. And that's because the animals are actually very instinctive. They can sense the eruption and the flood coming. So if you open the gates, they run to higher ground to get away from the flood. And once we've completed all of these points, we have to hang this poster in our window to signal the search and rescue teams. They will come through the village to make sure we all evacuated safely. So if they see this, they know the house is empty and they don't waste any precious time to look for you. And then all the locals, we are going to go up to a restaurant next to the church called SHOW Vík, and we're going to get really drunk. So yeah. Can't wait for this day. No, but at least this time, I think what helps me sleep a little better at night here is that we have technology to monitor volcanoes. So of course, we are keeping an eye on Katla, and it's unlikely that it's just going to erupt out of nothing. There will be a build-up of activity, hopefully, so let's see what happens. But of course, in 1918, you can imagine, that technology was not available. So people in this area back then, they got no warnings at all. And in this video, we actually have a story to tell you from someone who survived this eruption against all odds. So his name was Jón Gíslason, and he is the great-grandfather of Julius, who founded lavashow. And he was a farmer who, on the day of this eruption, found himself right next to Katla with 7 other farmers. They were bringing sheep back from the highlands before the winter, and they had no idea that Katla was erupting until they hear this rumbling noise, and they suddenly realized this massive flood was headed straight towards them. So quite an amazing story from this area. And then after the video, we will start to pour in the lava. So behind this wall, we have a big, powerful furnace. And in this furnace, we are now heating up natural lava from this area to 1100 degrees Celsius or 2000 Fahrenheit. And we're going to pour it through the wall. It will come down the channel here in the middle and spread out here in the bottom of the slide. And there's actually 2 types of lava flows in nature with very hilarious names. They are called Aa and Pahoihoi, which is not Icelandic but from Hawaii. And the one you're going to see here today, this is the one called Pahoihoi, which is a very bright, very orange in color, and very liquid type of lava flow. And that's the key here, because it's liquid, it's possible to pour down this slide we have. The other one called is not possible because it's so thick and viscous, almost like cold honey, so it would not flow down the slide. And the black sand you see here and everywhere around you, this is what we are melting in the furnace right now. So this is lava called basalt lava. That's the most common lava in the world. And we gather this just outside of Vík in the floodplains from Katla's eruption, because then we know the lava we're melting now is the same lava that erupted from Katla 105 years ago. So that's the lava we are remelting for you guys here today. So you ready to see this? Should we start? Yeah? Alright, then I will start the video, and then after the video I will remind you to please wear some glasses and keep them on when the lava is in the room. You can also wear your own glasses if you want, that's fine. It is also going to get pretty hot, so don't wear any too thick jackets, and feel free to take pictures. We just ask you to please turn off the flash. But yeah, enjoy the movie guys, and then I will see you shortly.
Iceland is the largest and most active volcanic island in the world, with a significant eruption every 3 to 5 years on average. There are more active volcanoes concentrated in Iceland than anywhere else on the planet. Iceland has over 30 active volcanoes, of which 13 have erupted in the last 1,000 years. It's also responsible for 1/3 of all the lava on Earth. There are two reasons for Iceland's intense volcanic activity. Firstly, the island is located on top of the mid-Atlantic ridge, split by two tectonic plates that are steadily moving away from each other about 2 centimeters per year. It's the only place on Earth where this is exposed and visible above sea level. Iceland is located over a so-called hotspot, meaning that underneath Iceland is a powerful mantle plume that continuously pushes magma towards the surface. As you probably know, this lovely town is called Vík and is located in the heart of Katla Geopark, the first official UNESCO geopark in Iceland. Katla Geopark consists of 4 volcano systems and holds the 2 most active volcano systems in Iceland: Tindfjallajökull, Grímsvötn, Katla, and Eyjafjallajökull.
Joe, cute. I don't know. All together now. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. Eyjafjallajökull. All 4 volcanoes are mostly covered by glaciers, and whenever glaciers and volcanoes meet, eruptions usually result in massive floods that destroy everything in their paths. Tindfjallajökull is the oldest and most mature volcanic system in Katla Geopark. It's located 55 kilometers from Vík and has not erupted since the settlement of Iceland. Grímsvötn is the most active volcano in Iceland and is believed to have erupted at least 60 times since the settlement. It is located below the northwestern part of Vatnajökull, the largest glacier in Europe. It last erupted in 2011, which was the biggest eruption in 140 years. Grímsvötn is also the mother to the Laki eruption in 1783 to 84. The deadliest volcanic eruption in historic time, killing over 2 million people worldwide. The Laki eruption, which is a 25-kilometer long fissure with 130 craters, lasted for 8 months and poured out an estimated 42 billion tons of lava. That is equal to the weight of 50,000 Golden Gate bridges. The lava field covers an area of 565 square kilometers, which is almost 7 times the size of Manhattan. The Laki eruption caused a global drop in temperatures by 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. In Iceland, the consequences were catastrophic. 25% of Iceland's human population died, and over 75% of Iceland's livestock. Iceland wasn't the only country affected, and many believe that the fundamental reason for the French Revolution was because of the Laki eruption. Eyjafjallajökull is located 40 kilometers away from Vík. It has erupted 4 times since the settlement of Iceland. It famously erupted in 2010, bringing air traffic around the world to a halt. Despite being the most famous volcano in Iceland, it is considered to be one of the more innocent ones. Katla, located 25 kilometers north of Vík. It has erupted 20 times since the settlement, roughly 2 times every century. It last erupted in 1918, 100 years ago, and is well overdue. Katla is the volcano the geopark takes its name from, and is one of the world's most powerful volcanoes. Katla volcano is roughly twice the size of Reykjavik and is covered by Mýrdalsjökull glacier, a 700-meter thick ice cap. The volcano may look innocent from afar, but every time Katla erupts, she needs to penetrate all that ice. This means that immense amounts of ice melt in a very short amount of time, leading to catastrophic flooding. If Katla were to erupt right now, we would have to evacuate immediately, as it could take 30 minutes or less for the flash flood to wipe this place out. In the last eruption of Katla in 1918, the devastating flash flood discharged as much water as the 4 largest rivers in the world combined. To give you a better understanding of just how dangerous an eruption in Katla can be, we have a dramatic story to tell you about one of the survivors from the 1918 Katla eruption. This person happens to be the great-grandfather of one of the founders of Icelandic lavashow. His name was Jón Gíslason. In the fall of 1918, the 21-year-old farmer was recently married and had taken over his father's farm east of Vík. The future seemed bright for the young couple. She was already pregnant with her first child, and their farm was prospering. The disaster was about to happen. As was customary in the fall, the farmers went north to gather the sheep that spent the summer roaming free and eating in the highlands. Jón Gíslason was one of the men leaving, and before he left, he gave his pregnant wife a tender goodbye. After 3 successful days, most of the sheep had been found and it was time to head back. But this was the day it would all change. October 12, 1918. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, and during the afternoon stop, Jón Gíslason decided to stretch his legs and run up the nearest hill. When he reached the top, he heard a distant sound, a strange rumbling that he didn't recognize. He looked to the north, and what he saw made his blood freeze in his veins. Katla was erupting, and a flash flood filled with massive icebergs was coming, threatening to crush them alive. For a moment, he stood there frozen in place, absolutely terrified. Then the adrenaline kicked in, and the only thing he managed to do before sprinting down the hill was to scream a single word to his fellow travelers at the top of his lungs. Katla. They had no time to spare. Without as much as a second thought, they jumped onto their horses and urged them on as fast as they could go, leaving the sheep behind. The aim was set south towards their homes. But when they came to a river, which usually was calm and easy to cross, it was clear that the flood was already filling it up, making it impossible to pass. They changed direction in a hurry and headed towards a nearby hill a few kilometers away. Young Gíslason took a look back, and he'd never been so afraid in his life. He could see the flood come crashing forward so violently that it was clear that if they wouldn't make it to the hill in time, none of them would live to tell the tale. It was going to be a close call, and the man urged the exhausted horses on. At long last, they made it to the hill just in time. The flood came crashing by only a few meters after the last rider, ripping up everything in its path. But they were safe. The initial relief the man had felt was short-lived. The flood was now headed straight to their homes, where the women, children and the elderly were waiting, and there was no way to warn them. They feared the worst. The whole night they sat there cold and hungry, asphalt pouring down like black rain, and brought with it a terrifying lightning storm. At long last day broke, and the asphalt slowed down a bit. They now saw that the whole area, which had been green and lush before the flood, was now nothing but a black desert, covered in mud and icebergs as far as they could see. With worried minds, they set out on the difficult journey back home. As they got closer, they saw nothing but destruction. Farm after farm was covered in mud, and it was clear that the flood had been devastating to the whole area. Young Gíslason was desperate to get home, but at the same time, he feared the worst. He finally reached home and was ecstatic to find his pregnant wife and everyone else safe and sound. Shortly after, his wife gave birth to the first child. If it wasn't for that great escape, we wouldn't be sitting here now, listening to this remarkable tale.
Okay, so now we can put on our glasses and we're going to feel the heat of the molten lava. And the first lava formation I'm going to show you is this one. These are called Pele's hairs, named after the Hawaiian goddess of volcanoes. These are very thin filaments of lava, which are usually created in natural eruptions if the lava falls over an edge and gets stretched by strong gusts of wind. These are very hard to find in nature because they are so fragile. These things are made of volcanic glass, so they break apart and turn to dust very quickly. In Icelandic, these formations are called Nornahaur, which translates to witches' hairs. And as soon as the lava begins flowing into the room, it also starts to release the heat very quickly. And you can see the lava is cooling down because the more heat it releases, the darker the lava appears. And up here, it already looks like this lava has stopped flowing. But further down, you can see there is actually still more lava accumulating. So what's happened over here is that the lava on the surface has already cooled down enough to form a solid crust. And lava is a very good insulator. So this thin crust on the surface insulates the lava in the middle of the channel, keeping it hot molten liquid. So there's actually still lava flowing inside here and accumulating, as we can see further down. And it's through that process that lava tunnels are created in nature, because when lava is flowing, it begins cooling and solidifying on the outer layers of the lava flow that is exposed to the atmosphere. And then those solid layers become insulation, keeping the inside liquid hot. And what happens occasionally is that if the eruption stops or the lava is slowing down, the liquid empties out of this solid insulation, leaving behind a lava tunnel. And I also brought with me some ice, so I can show you what happens if we cool down the lava very quickly. Because when lava cools down quickly, it is not able to crystallize into rocks, so instead it becomes what it's most made of. And this basalt lava, it's around 47% silica. So if we put ice on it, then it will transform into volcanic glass. So let's see what happens when we put this on here. So now we see the surface of the lava is rapidly changing into this beautiful black shiny volcanic glass as it's solidifying very quickly. And you also see the lava inflates a little bit. This is caused by the steam of the ice. Sometimes the steam gets trapped underneath the surface of the lava as I'm pushing the ice into it, and then the steam begins to inflate the lava from the inside. Now this happens in nature as well with gases like sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide. These gases can inflate liquid lava and create lava caves inside a lava field. But yeah, now we are seeing it changing the surface into this volcanic glass. So now this is completely solid. And up here, this is getting pretty solid as well. I can try to go underneath it and lift it up a little bit, and you see it holding together. But yeah, it's still a bit liquid inside. As you can see, it's molding and moving. And as I'm holding it here, some of this liquid starts to spill out. There we go. And you can see it's not quite as liquid as when it was coming into the room, because as the lava is cooling down, it gradually becomes thicker and more viscous before it solidifies completely. So now we have a much more thick and viscous lava. Almost like mozzarella cheese. Stringy lava. Whee. Fun job. And you can actually hear the sound of the lava cooling down. If you listen to it, you can hear it's making these little crackling sounds and popping sounds. So what's happening now, as the lava is cooling, it also begins to take up less and less volume. So right now the lava is shrinking. And as it shrinks, it also changes from a liquid to a solid. So the lava starts to put a lot of pressure on itself. And then at some point, it has to start breaking and fracturing into smaller pieces. So that's the sounds that you're hearing from the lava. It's cooling and shrinking and breaking, like right there. And it's actually this process that is the reason why we get these basalt columns that you see around you here in Iceland. They are made in the same way. When lava is cooling and shrinking and starts cracking, it cracks in 120-degree angles through a process called columnar jointing, and then we end up with basalt columns. However, of course, these come from a very, very large lava field, so they were cooling much slower and crystallized into rock. As you're probably noticing right now, all of this lava is turning into glass, not just where I put the ice. And this is because we only have around 70 kilos of lava in total. And because it is a very small amount, it releases the heat too quickly to crystallize. But in an eruption like Víkurbraut that happened here now 3 years in a row, and the lava can take years to cool down, then what happens differently is that the molecules in the lava have enough time to move around and organize themselves into crystalline structures before the lava has cooled down completely. And when that happens, we get rock. So the only difference between the glass and the rocks is that in the glass, the molecules are in a chaos, but in rocks, they are in structured patterns, making it stronger. And I have a little device with me here, so now we can actually see how much the lava has cooled down already. So I'm going to start by taking the temperature right here on the surface, where I just put the ice, and there it has already cooled down to about 435 degrees Celsius. So quite quickly cooling down. But underneath the surface, let's break through here. Here is probably going to be a little bit toastier. So let's see. So right there, it is still 940 degrees Celsius. So you can see how well lava insulates itself. And a really good example of this is actually the eruption in 2021 in Víkurbraut, the first one. And in that eruption, so much lava came out of the earth, it filled an entire valley in the mountains actually. And recently, we discovered a new lava tunnel there. And of course, geologists were hoping to explore it. However, they found out the ambient temperature inside this lava tunnel 3 years after the eruption is still around 400 degrees Celsius. So yeah, it takes a while for lava to cool down. And you can actually tell with your eyes, just by looking at it, how hot it is. You saw when it came into the room at 1100 degrees, the lava is very bright. And the reason it's so bright in the beginning is due to the massive amounts of energy that we have to put into it to bring it to that temperature. So to make this lava ready for you guys right now, we have to start the furnace at least 5 hours ago. And during the last 5 hours, as we apply more and more heat to the lava, we are also exciting the molecules. The molecules get very excited and they start moving around faster and faster and faster. And as they move around, they produce friction, which gives out light. So now this energy is released into the room, heating us up. That means the molecules are slowing down and the lava gets darker. So anywhere that's completely black, like over here, this lava has already cooled down below 600 degrees Celsius. But if it's still glowing orange, like it is inside here, then you see it is still above 600 degrees. So right around 600 is when the lava has cooled down so much, the molecules are no longer emitting any light. And as you can see here, the lava is perfectly cooked, medium rare. Nice. So now it has completely solidified and I can easily start breaking it. But up here, it is actually still pretty liquid. Let's see if I try to break it. It's holding together. So that means here it is still around 950 plus degrees Celsius. And we actually tested once to see how long this would take to cool down to room temperature after we pour it into the room. Mostly because we had nothing better to do here during COVID, so we were just doing stuff. So we pour the lava into an empty room and we let it sit without breaking it or moving it. And right here in the thick part of this channel, it took 3 days before this cooled down completely. So even though it's only 70 kilos, it still takes a lot of time. You see here, it's still very liquid. Woo. I hope you guys feel nice and warm. I'm gonna turn up the lights a little bit now. There we go. And then if you have any questions, then you are welcome to raise your hand, and then I'll try to answer. Yeah?
Between shows, how do you clean it up?
How do we clean it up? Yeah, good question. So not waiting 3 days, of course. So what we do is right after the show, we begin clearing it up. And it's still, 500-600 degrees, but we use steel shovels, and we throw a hot glass into some steel buckets. And then once we have it all cleared out, we can prepare the slide for the next show. And then the glass that you see here now, this glass will actually get remelted. So we can remelt the glass. Not indefinitely, but we can do it a few times over and over. So yeah, that's how we do it. We just pick it up with steel shovels. Any other questions? Yeah?
I actually heard yesterday about Blue Lagoon having an eruption soon.
Yeah, possibly, yes.
That seems a little scary.
Yes, no, it's definitely not the ideal location for an eruption. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it could potentially just slow down and nothing happens, but they have closed it now. And there was a lot of earthquakes again last night. I think the strongest one was 5. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't go swimming in the Blue Lagoon at any time soon. Unless you want to play the floor is lava, but that's up to you. That's your thing, not me.
They just closed the Blue Lagoon?
Yes, it's closed. It closed for a week. Yeah, because of the earthquake.
Did it close yesterday or today?
I believe it was starting today.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were there yesterday.
You were there yesterday. Yeah. Good. I'm happy to see you alive. On the edge. All right, well, before I let you guys go, I did want to mention that if you want to have some volcanic glass to take with you home, we do actually sell pieces of it outside, so feel free to get one. And the glasses, you can just put these into the bowl there with my friend so we can clean them. But I hope you guys learned something new today, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, thank you.
It feels funny doing the shows now because it's like the whole summer since June we've been like 50 people in the room, 50 people in the room. Now it's like 7. Where did that go? What happened?
Oh yeah, it was amazing. Thank you very much.
All right, so
That was fantastic. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, when you're ready, we're gonna do the backstage. So we're back in here. Yeah.
There's more.
There's more.
All right, let's go.
This is just the beginning.
Whoa.
There's more.
It's a little toasty in here. So yeah, here we have the furnace where we are now melting lava for the next show at 5 o'clock. And this is also built on steel because steel melts at 1,500 degrees Celsius. And then inside the furnace we have a separate container, a crucible, which is this big bowl here. So this is sitting in the middle of the furnace, and this is where we put the lava inside. These are made from silicon, carbon, and graphite. So they will not melt, but they do shed layers every time. So they have to be replaced every 10 days because they are getting thinner and thinner. So if we don't change it on time, it will crack open, and lava goes into the furnace and into the pipes, and then it's a big mess. And these are not made in Iceland. We have to get them special made in Mexico and then shipped to Iceland. So it's very expensive as well. But our biggest expense, of course, is the energy. This furnace is powered by gas. That's the only option. At the moment, it's running on propane gas, and daily it costs around $4,000. So $4,000 a day. But we are planning to soon switch to methane gas that is extracted from recycled food waste in Reykjavik. So that is a better option because methane has more energy per volume and it's also more environmentally friendly. So our goal is to go to methane, and we're already running on methane in Reykjavik where we have our other show. The only problem is the methane tanks are so big, there's no trucks in Iceland able to bring them to Vík. So we have to figure out the transportation first. Yeah. So at the moment, propane gas. And you can see here, this is like temperature. You can see right now it is at 1090 degrees Celsius. So
Do you know what that is in Fahrenheit?
less than 2000.
Okay.
So we're in that area. 1100 is pretty close to 2000. So this is great, but it only tells us how hot is the furnace. It doesn't say how hot is the lava. So before we pour the lava into the room, we have to check it. And the way we check it is we turn off the furnace, we open it, and we have to stir the lava and make sure there's no lumps. Now this is very dangerous because if you put your face there, your face will be gone in a split second. So to protect us, we have to wear these special helmets. And these helmets have the same visor that you see on astronauts. So this is real gold, which reflects heat radiation. Astronauts use it to protect them from the sun. We use it to protect us from the lava. And you can try it if you want. You just stand here, you can feel the heat radiation, and then you try it with the helmet on. And you notice there's quite a big difference.
Are you a volcanologist?
No, just a nerd.
Did you have special training in order to do what you're doing here?
Just a little bit, but you know, I knew most of the facts already because I was glacier guiding for 5-6 years. So
Okay.
you learn a lot just in that job. Yeah.
How many are trained like you to do this?
Mainly, we have 2 of us in Vík right now who can do this. And then we have, of course, in Reykjavik as well, a few people. So,
Okay.
So in all of Iceland, maybe, 10 max.
Wow.
Yeah.
In Reykjavik, you have one exact same setup?
It's similar, but the stories are different. This one is more focused on this area, the geopark, while Reykjavik focuses more on the eruptions in Víkurbraut and the biggest eruptions throughout Icelandic history that affected Iceland and globally as well. So it's a little bit different stories. But the lava is pretty similar, just much bigger slide, a bigger room, because it's a newer show, so it can fit like 120 people.
What is the white on?
It's just a refractory material, so it's just insulation basically, almost like a fiberglass, but it's keeping the heat in to seal it as much as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not.
So you add that on top.
Just to keep it from leaking hot air. Yeah. The more you seal it, the more energy efficient. You know.
And we're not getting the gaseousness. We're not. I mean the toxicity of.
No, it goes straight out through the ventilation. Yeah, and it inflates, it combusts, so it's nothing really going into the room here.
Okay.
And also, yeah, it's like the sand we're melting is a good choice because the sand already exploded in an eruption that was very explosive.
Yes.
So the sand also doesn't have any gases trapped in it. So it's a very safe option to melt sand compared to other things. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you got chunks of magma inside the volcano,
Yeah.
and you tried to melt that,
Well, it's not really possible to do this, but theoretically, if we could just drill into the earth and get magma straight out, that could potentially have a lot of toxic gases in it. That's why there's toxic gases when there is an eruption like Víkurbraut. You know, hydrogen fluoride, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, these gases. So because we are using sand that already erupted and exploded, there's no gases. But if you just took magma out of the earth straight, it could have gases in it that are toxic.
right?
So that is why you never want to try like cooking food of lava in nature because it can be putting toxic gases into the food. Well, here we could technically have a barbecue.
See, my question wasn't about the molten lava, but the
Yeah.
actual the already
Yeah,
solidified
so
rock.
It is a small chance, but yeah, it's possible. You can see like rocks like this. You see it's very porous.
Yes.
And that's because it was gaseous. So there could be gases trapped in it still. It's hard to say, but if it was, it would probably be a small amount. It's not
Okay.
enough to like hurt you, but it's possible. Yeah.
But the sand is completely
Yeah.
clean.
It's no gases in the sand at all. Yeah.
Wow.
And this is actually kind of funny. This is metal from the lava. So we've discovered that actually here, that you can extract metal from lava, because metals like iron is heavier than the silica in the lava, so it sinks. So when we change the crucibles, we find these blobs in the bottom, concentrated metal from the lava.
Wow.
So this is not a cheap way to get metal, because it's like $40,000 of gas to get this much. But you can see it's very magnetic, and it's also very heavy. You can feel the weight. Very solid. Yeah. So this is metal from the lava from Katla 105 years ago. Well, technically I'm not Mr. Lava. That would be your news.
Okay.
Yeah, but I like this shirt, so I'm gonna wear it still.
Are they in town? The two of them?
They are in Reykjavik.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have a new office there, and that's where they operate out of, and they come here like maybe once a month,
Yeah.
just to make sure that we're doing the job.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this is excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. I will allow you to cool down. It is probably almost 15 minutes